Hey, what's going on, guys? This is AndrewChicken, and welcome back to another video. I recently grinded Kasumi all the way to level 50 throughout this past double XP weekend, and you can tell because of this beautiful golden yokai doll. I do, in fact, have the gold skin. And while it is a very nice looking gold skin, the character itself is, well, she's very problematic. There's a lot to talk about with Kasumi, and so today in this video, I kind of want to just talk about what I would do to change Kasumi to try and make her feel a lot better in the current game, both to make her feel good to play as and to play against, because there are a lot of strong opinions about Kasumi, and honestly, she does need some tweaks. So let's go ahead and jump right in. So first, I want to talk about the most egregious issue with Kasumi, which is her primary fire. This is auto-aim! Yay! Everyone's favorite thing to play with in video games. So it's not quite as steep of an auto-aim cone as Leon's. If I were playing Leon right now, I'd be able to hit every single victor here. But it is still, well, pretty loose aim. I mean, look at where my reticle is. I can hit that victor. Look, I just hit it. And that is, well, that's not even close to him. There are like 3 victors of distance at least between my reticle and this actual victor. So that's a huge problem, and it causes Kasumi to feel very unfun, both to play as and to play against. When you're playing as Kasumi, well, you just kind of hold left click and look in the general direction of who you're trying to hit, and you'll kill them. And there's no aiming required. Look, I can be aiming like up here and still hit that victor. So it results in really lazy aiming, which is bad for a number of reasons. I mean, obviously, not fun to just do that. Like, you know, part of the fun of playing video games is trying to aim and actually hit people. You know, it forces you to be engaged with the game and actually play the game. But also, if you play enough Kasumi, well, I mean, you're going to get into the habit of just having lazy aim, and it's going to make it harder to go to other characters and play other games. And Paladins is already a game that has an issue with having really forgiving hitboxes and allowing for really forgiving aim. And so, yeah, it feels bad to play Paladins and then go to another game like Overwatch, and that's even worse with Kasumi. But even just switching from Kasumi to other characters, yeah, if you play her enough, your aim is going to suffer. But also, it is tremendously horrible to play against if you are pretty much just any flank in the game. Kasumi makes all flank mains pretty much just want to uninstall the game and not play, because she completely negates any character who relies on evasion to survive. You have characters like Eevee, Maeve, Vatu, Sevan, Androxus, pretty much almost all of the flanks in the game, who, you know, part of how they survive is they are just really hard to hit, and they rely on human error in order to survive. They don't really have much in the way of actually tanking damage. They might have an ability like Ice Block or Reversal, but those aren't surefire ways to survive, and the primary way they survive is just by, like, you know, running around dodging attacks. But you can't dodge Kasumi at all. It's impossible, because she takes the human error out of the equation. She makes it so that, well, no matter how hard you dash flick, no matter how hard you pounce, no matter how hard you spin around in soar, she will hit you. And it feels awful to play against. And so for the sake of people who enjoy these characters, Kasumi's auto-aim needs to just be fixed. Another issue with Kasumi's auto-aim is that it basically takes the delay out, too, of, like, peeking around a corner, trying to find someone, aim your reticle at them, and then kill them. It takes that skill out, and again, it takes out the human error of, you know, being slow and, you know, having actual human reaction times. So if I just hold left click, the second I peek this corner, I'm hitting Victor. And of course my aim can kind of snap to him because I already know where he is because it's the shooting range. If that were just some random, like, Leon, and she's just anywhere in the middle of this clearing, well, as soon as I turn the corner, no matter where my reticle is, I'm pretty much going to be able to hit her. Unstoppable. And that's just, it's not fair. It's like the game is playing itself for you. So it feels bad to play as, because, again, you're not really playing the game, you're just letting it hold left click for you, but also feels awful to play against. So really just the issue of this auto-aim, removing the human error, is something that's horrible. So yeah, what should be done about her auto-aim? Well, quite simply, it just needs to be made basically equivalent to true aiming. You can keep this whole marking mechanic, but if her auto-aim was more like, you know, this level of auto-aim, where, like, I'm a little bit away from the victor, and so I can be a little bit off, I'll still hit, but not like this, I think that would be much more fair. Like, this right here, where my reticle is, should be turned down to like this. at most, if not tighter, to the point that it's true aiming. I think that would be good. Someone in my stream chat suggested, hey, instead of an auto-aim cone, what if we just had an auto-aim cylinder? So, like, you just have a circle around your reticle, and if they were anywhere within that, you'd mark them. So, I could be aiming, like, here and still hit her, but I wouldn't be able to aim here and still hit her. Just tightening down the auto-aim in general would be amazing. Not only would it add skill back into this character, because you'd actually have to be a little bit more precise with your aim, thus making evasive champions a little bit better against her and feel like they actually stand a chance, like it's actually fair to fight her, but it would also sort of be a buff for Kasumi. Now let me explain how that works. So a major issue that Kasumi has is that she's actually pretty bad against shields and deployables. So shields and deployables both kind of obfuscate her targeting, and make it so she can't really target the right person. Even if she's aiming at someone, it might target the deployable instead. So characters like Barrack, and most notably Vivian, will really counter her, right? Put up the shield, I can't aim under her feet, and even if I go to the side here, like, I still really can't target her. And same goes for the ultimate. Like, I'm aiming directly at Vivian, right now my reticle is on her, and I'm just killing the drones. And you'll notice, I'm only doing 200 damage to each drone. So I can't really kill those that effectively, because she doesn't get curse stacks on deployables and shields, and so her damage doesn't ramp up like it's supposed to. So she is really, really weak to that, and if the auto-aim cone were made smaller, then it would be much, much easier to actually target the right person. Like with those ult drones, maybe I would actually target Vivian if I was directly aiming at her with a tighter auto-aim cone. So yeah, that would actually be kind of a buff to Kasumi. And even if it doesn't help against Vivian, it would certainly help against characters like Barrack, who have deployable turrets that just kind of go stationary on the floor next to him, instead of being as close to him as Vivian's shield or Vivian's drones are. So yeah, as you can see, nerfing the auto-aim would be both a buff and a nerf. Technically, yes, she would be worse against evasive targets, but this would be healthy for the game because you shouldn't have a character with pure auto-aim who just completely makes an entire class of the game irrelevant. That's just not okay. It's really not cool at all. And yeah, if the auto-aim cone were made tighter, yeah, she'd be worse against evasive targets, but she'd also be better against her hard counters, which are shields and deployables. Now, one final thing to note about her auto-aim primary fire is that since she can actually only use her primary fire when she has someone marked like this, so if I'm aiming at, like, just the ceiling here, you can see my abilities are locked, it actually means that she is really weak to invisible characters, because someone can go invisible and thus be untargetable. And so, unlike every other character in the game, she can't really fire predictive shots at someone and still hit them even if she can't see them. So she's forced to buy Illuminate, and this makes her really weak to Strix, Skye, Shaolin, etc. Which is a weird dynamic to have because there aren't too many characters who are weak to such characters like Skye and Strix. But that is something else to note. And honestly, it's not a bad dynamic to have someone who's really good against Androxus but really bad against Vivian and Strix. Like, it actually creates kind of an interesting dynamic, and I do like that. But I still think the auto-aim cone should be nerfed. You could still keep the marking mechanic and make the aim still pretty loose, like you could still hit Ying if you were aiming like here, maybe. But it should not be as loose as it is, because it feels bad to play against, and it feels bad to play as too, because it takes absolutely zero skill to aim with Kasumi. Now, some people might say that if you're going to nerf Kasumi's auto-aim, you might want to nerf her range as well, but I don't actually really think that'll be necessary. I mean, maybe it will be, and you might want to test it, but you can see this is about her effective range. I can hit this Victor from all the way over here, and you'll notice she has no damage fall-off. So this range is technically superior to some hit scans who have damage fall-off. It's superior to Androxus, for example. And while yes, she wouldn't be able to hit those guys downrange like Androxus would, she at least does full damage to people within this range, which is better than some characters. So I don't know if that would necessarily need a buff. It's something you might have to play around with if you nerf the auto-aim, but my initial opinion is that you would not need to buff the range. So next, let's talk about her damage. So Kasumi actually has pretty low damage at first, but if you ramp it up with her stacks, she gets to be doing pretty good damage. So we start off doing 200, 250, 300, 350, and then 400, 450 at max stacks. And with the Talented Powered Curse, we attack 25% faster. So really, she's weak before she gets strong. It's kind of a ramp-up thing. And I think that actually is a pretty nice gimmick, because her damage, I don't think anyone will argue, feels weak. I think it's right about where it should be, but only if, again, you have to actually aim it, because currently the damage is far too much considering how free it is. But that doesn't mean the damage should be nerfed, it means that it shouldn't be made as free. And so I think actually it's in a really good spot. One thing that people might say is too high is the damage on her Savage Tear. So if you reach 5 stacks, and then Savage Tear, you can get up to an 1100 damage burst. Now that is actually with a card. So if you look in her build here, you can see Essence Drain is a card, which at level 5 will cause your Savage Tear to deal an additional 10% damage per stack of curse on your target, which is actually up to 50% extra damage if you have 5 stacks. So it significantly increases the damage. If I were to swap my loadout to a build that doesn't have this, so let's take this build that's garbage, and take this card out completely. I'll just put Duration on stacks in, because why the heck not? You can see it actually does 900 damage. So the card really buffs up the damage. 200 extra damage on a card is a pretty big deal, because going from 900 to 1100 can mean the difference between getting a kill or having to spend one extra shot killing someone. So I don't necessarily think that card is super healthy for the game. You could perhaps make the case that maybe you should remove it, replace it with something different, and then just make the Savage Tear like an even 1000 at 5 stacks. I don't know if that would be the answer, but I can tell you that that card is extremely unhealthy. But yeah, in terms of the actual burst number itself, I don't really know. I mean, it feels certainly very good to use. I think, like, before discussing whether we should nerf the damage of the Savage Tear, we should really just see how it plays when the damage is less free. Because again, the Savage Tear feels awful to play against because of how free it is, but I don't think it's necessarily bad because of the damage. Because look at how long it takes me to kill the game. Bam, bam, bam. Finally do the Savage Tear, it's an execute. But that wasn't, like, the quickest kill ever. But the problem is, again, like, it's so free. There's no human error involved. There's no delay. There's no aim. It's just bam, 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 bam. And that didn't even actually kill the Victor there, so I would have to run the card there. Which is why maybe you could justify removing the card and then buffing the damage to 1000. But all of these damage issues stem from how free the damage is, but not necessarily the damage numbers themselves, because I do actually think they're in a pretty good place. So now let's talk about her utility. Now, I actually quite like these little spirit bomb thingies. I think they're a very fun gimmick to play around. I think there's actually pretty good counterplay to it, and I think it's a pretty fair ability for Kasumi to have overall. So yeah, she can place down 3 of these spirit lures, and if an enemy triggers them, she will teleport to the spirit lure. At which point, if the enemy is standing within range, they will be feared, take like 100 damage, and also get some curse stacks preemptively built on them, so she has a quicker time ramping up her damage. And I think that it's ultimately pretty fair. I noticed when I was playing, even if I had the range card at max, which can increase the radius of the bombs by up to 25%, I was still sometimes struggling to secure the fear on some people. Because if you get in range, there's a little bit of delay before Kasumi teleports to you, you can just back away from the bomb, and then if you actually back away from the bomb, you can end up trapping the Kasumi by hitting her with a stunning ability if you know that she's coming. So yeah, there is actually fair counterplay for the enemies, and I think the fear duration is just about right too. It's 1.5 seconds. With Resilience 3, it's basically non-existent. But one thing that should happen about the fear is that it should be made consistent with the other 2 fears in the game we have, which are Seven's ultimate and Maldamba's ultimate. Both of those fears cause you to run in third person, but for some reason Kasumi's fear is first person. So I don't know why that is, but it should be made third person to be consistent. And also because it helps you better understand as the player that you're feared. You're not in control of your movements. When you're in first person, it's a little bit hard to tell that. So yeah, it would really be nice if that were fixed. I think it's a bug, because I don't know why they would make that like an intentional thing. But yeah, it should be a third person fear. Absolutely. I think that would be great. And also in terms of the disarm, I am so happy that we have a new crowd control ability in this game. I think it's really cool to have more crowd control abilities to spice things up, because, yeah, eventually, if every new champion comes out with just a stun, it gets kind of boring. And also, having a billion stuns in the game isn't always the most fun thing to play against. And yeah, I think the disarm duration is about right as well. The interesting thing about the disarm is that you rarely see it sometimes, because you use Savage Tear as a finisher move in a lot of instances, and you can only disarm at 5 stacks anyways. So yeah, by the time you get 5 stacks up on someone, you're usually going to kill them, especially if you're running the card that increases the damage you do. So yeah, the disarm is actually kind of a rare tool, but when it works, it works. It's actually, you know, quite fun to play with as a Kasumi, and if you are as an enemy struggling to it, Rezeal 3 cuts the duration down to basically null. Now, one thing that the disarm is really good against is characters who charge their projectiles, like Atlas or Shaolin or Imani, because if you disarm them at the apex of their charge, right when they're about to loose an arrow or, you know, shoot you with their fully charged chrono cannon shot, it'll basically just reset that. So it's actually super good against those characters, and it kind of makes Kasumi a counter to them in some aspect. And I like that whole dynamic. I like that there's, you know, more interesting ways to counterplay opponents now, and it'd be cool to see maybe another 1 or 2 characters get a disarm mechanic, because, well, again, new crowd control makes it interesting, and if you don't like crowd control, you can buy resilience. That's the beauty of Paladins. And then, yeah, the last real utility she has is that she actually, with her curse stacks, makes the enemies do less damage. And again, I think that's pretty fair, considering her damage isn't exactly the highest when you're not at 5 curse stacks. And so as you're building up those curse stacks, you know, you might not be doing as much damage to them during the build-up phase, but you're causing them to do less and less damage to you. And when you stack it with Haven, it's pretty powerful. It's like they saw Ray's damage playstyle with Midnight Stroll and decided to just make it into a proper damage character. Like, I really like that Kasumi is the type of damage character who is more about utility, less about damage. And while we're on the topic of damage, we can talk about her ultimate. Now, we originally thought this ultimate was going to be pretty weak on release, because we saw that it was just, oh, it's this bomb that does like half their health and damage, and it shoots shotgun blasts instead of an actual bomb, and if you're above or below it, you can't be hit by it, etc., etc. But in terms of actual gameplay, I found that it's actually pretty good. It's pretty reliable. Basically, the way you use it is, instead of trying to use it as some big bomb where you just get the entire team afflicted by it, no, you just use it to kill anyone who you want to kill. If there's a champion who's bugging you, like say there's a buck that's farming your team, well, press ult, and get to stabbing, get 5 stacks, combine it with a DOT, and it's almost always a kill. Like, even if Kasumi dies, a lot of the times, if she's done enough damage to the target, the DOT will kill them after she died. So it's quite good for that. The one sort of issue with this ultimate is that it can feel very frustrating to play against, because it's, I think, the most powerful damage over time in the game. And so you can be like, you know, maybe at like 1300 HP and just narrowly escape the Kasumi, but since you have her ultimate on you, you know, you explode when you're past the wall and just watch your health whittle away, and then you die. And so that can feel frustrating to play against, but, I mean, I do think it's okay for an ultimate to be powerful. Obviously, that's the ultimate goal of ultimates, right? Is they're supposed to be the character's most powerful ability. So I'm not really sure if you'd want to change anything about the ultimate. I think, again, you should just nerf the auto-aim and then go from there. Because something really cheap about the ultimate is it is auto-aim just like the rest of her kit. So you can do this, not even be aiming at the victor, and bam. So, yeah, I think ultimately that is really just the stem from which all her issues flow out from. Like, all of her issues just boil down to, it's free, it's auto-aim, and that's really rough. Now, the last ability we have to talk about is the movement ability. Now, I've been saving this one for last because I do want to kind of give, I guess, a really helpful suggestion, I think, for this movement ability. So I actually do like the concept of this movement ability, how it's a two-part thing, where you can go out, and then you can choose to teleport back to your body, or have your body teleport to you. It's more useful as an engagement tool, because, of course, you can park your body behind a corner, then use the ethereal to go out, and then get close to me and start stabbing. And I've also had, I'm going to put a clip up on the screen here in a second, but I've had a case where I actually used it to tank some damage, because it does have inherent DR, then teleport back to the body, and just kill the person who assaulted me. In this case, it was a Bomb King ult, and it was actually really helpful for that. Here we are. Okay. You know what? That's okay. I just disarmed the turret. What am I doing? Face tank that with a DR. Win because of Furia? Oh my gosh. Alright, outplayed. And they say her movement ability is useless. I just survived King Bomb because of it. But yeah, it does have some problems. So I think the biggest problem is that it has a set duration, and you cannot teleport to your soul until the end of the ability. So it makes it kind of hard to escape from a certain situation. Like if you want to quickly get out of dodge, you can't really do that. And it only gets worse when you actually use the talent that's supposed to buff the movement ability. So this talent extends the duration of body and soul by 1 second, and then it gives you a bunch of healing based on the damage your body took, which is supposed to be unaffected by Cauterize. I don't think that's the case. I think it is affected by Cauterize, and it's bugged or something. When I used it, I didn't really feel like the healing was that powerful. But yeah, this talent is problematic, because if you extend the duration by 1 second, then that's 1 extra second your body is sitting there in a vulnerable position, and if you're trying to use it to escape from something, you're just taking all that extra damage, and you can't really stop it. So it's actually quite a design flaw, because yeah, even though this talent is supposed to help you escape by giving you healing when the ability ends, because the ability lasts for a longer duration, there's actually more of a chance that the enemies will straight up just kill you instead of maiming you. So, big problem. And it also, there's a card that extends the duration. So if you were to run that card too, let's see, increase the duration of body and soul. You can increase by half a second. You can have a body and soul that's this long, which would be really helpful to engage. But if you're trying to use it as a retreat option, well, you're basically just screwed. You're basically just telling the enemies, hey, I'm sitting in one spot for 4 seconds. Please kill me. And the solution is very elegant. So when you are in your body and soul, you can't left click, you can't right click. Those don't do anything. So simply add a function where you can left click or right click or whichever button you want to bind it to, and you teleport to your soul. You cut the duration of the ability short, and you just teleport to the soul. So like, let's say I do this, and then I left click now, I would teleport to my soul, and the ability would be cut short. The simplest and most elegant solution, because then you wouldn't be penalized for actually increasing the duration of your body and soul. There would be more incentive to do that. It would make the talent actually feel a lot better, because again, the talent just straight up penalizes you, and it would give you so much more flexibility in the movement ability. You would have one bind to teleport back to your body, and then the other bind to teleport back to your soul. It'd be a really cool 2-part movement ability, and that's all you'd have to do to fix it. And yeah, I really think that would be a good idea. I would love to see that implemented, and if they did, I don't think you'd see any complaints about this movement ability anymore, because it has genuine function, you know, genuine helpfulness in terms of the damage reduction. It helps you peek around corners if you so choose, and then decide whether or not you want to go there after all. And yeah, it's really cool. It fits her theme, and that's all you would need to do to change it. It'd be really simple. So yeah, those are my thoughts on her abilities. Lastly, we can real quick talk about her talents. So you guys already know how I feel about the movement ability talent, because I just, you know, did a whole spiel about that. In terms of the other 2 talents, I actually do like these talents. I feel like Empowered Curse is probably her most powerful one. It was the one I saw most success with, because it's simply just a raw buff. Increase your attack speed, increase your movement speed by 5%. You could maybe make the argument that it should be nerfed down to 4%. I think going any lower would just be a little bit extreme. But it's definitely a really good talent, and I enjoy it. It was a fun playstyle. Going faster is just fun, inherently. Like, that's really good. And then Spirit Bombs is actually quite an interesting playstyle. It does what a talent is supposed to do, and it completely changes the way you play the game, because the Spirit Lures have a ranged deployment. You can't teleport to them, but they just explode when an enemy gets near and fears them, and it's a cool playstyle. And it's not the greatest on all maps, because sometimes the placement is a little bit wonky, but on certain maps like Splitstone, it works really well. But yeah, the reason the placement is wonky is because, like, well, sometimes it doesn't quite go where you think it will. Like, I'm aiming, right? The center of my screen is that arrow, so you'd think it would deploy kind of like right at the threshold of the door right there, but actually it'll deploy in the middle of the door. And so it's just a little bit unintuitive. It's kind of the same issue that I think rock totems have and stuff like that, and I don't know what more they could do to fix it. But yeah, it is nice that you can kind of hold the ability down and see where you want to deploy it. That's really nice. And something someone else pointed out is that maybe you could give it a custom animation, because you're not dropping it at your feet anymore. So kind of just doing whatever she does with the doll, like I guess just rubbing the doll off and then onto the floor, doesn't really make sense. So maybe you can make a custom animation for that, but that's kind of just nitpicking. It wouldn't affect the gameplay at all. It would just affect, I guess, the polish of the character and making her feel more distinct with this playstyle. But I am definitely a fan of this talent. I think it's perfectly viable in certain situations. And yeah, it's pretty cool. No complaints there. But yeah, in terms of the actual cards, I like a lot of her cards. Obviously, like I said, this one is kind of problematic because of the way the movement ability works, but it's not inherently a bad idea. The healing is nice. The movement speed cards are pretty fun, although I found that they were less impactful than some of the other cards. Unwilling Victim is very helpful because, well, sometimes it's just really hard to confirm the AoE of Spirit Lure's explosion. Like, sometimes it's really hard to just get that to actually apply to an enemy because it feels a little bit on the smaller side, but, I mean, that's fair. And it's really only, like, something you'd run if you were trying to really play around Spirit Lures anyways. Like, I use this in my Spirit Bombs build, and that's about it. And, yeah, also, like I said earlier, this card, Essence Drain, behind me, is extremely strong and arguably unhealthy. There have been cards kind of like this in the past. Like, there was a card for Grok back in the day that straight up increased the percentage healing of his totems. And I just think that's kind of unhealthy to have as a card. Like, the cards are supposed to, like, augment your playstyle, but you shouldn't have a card that's, like, mandatory to run because it's just so good. And just makes her feel like so much better. And this is one of those cards that's pretty much just mandatory, because, like, if you don't run this card, then you're just missing out on extra damage, and it's going to be harder to confirm kills with your Savage Tear. So, yeah, I already explained what I think about that earlier. The cooldown card is nice. I feel like the cooldown reduction cards are pretty much fair. And also, there's a really good level 1 filler, Surrounded by Fear. I wasn't sure how good this card would be at first, but like, if you're looking to make a Kasumi build, you should have this card at level 1. I don't think you necessarily need to have it any higher, but having it at level 1 is really helpful for just kind of starting a point fight. Like, whenever you engage in a team fight at the start of a round, you can just come in there and instantly have 2 stacks on the first person you target. And then, of course, if you decide to switch targets, obviously she has this functionality where you move 2 at once. So you can just move those to someone else. But it really just helps her engage fights better, because it's one less stack you have to apply to somebody, so you can get to killing them a little bit more quickly. And it really just helps her get an initial pick at the start of a team fight. And yeah, I wouldn't really change anything about the card. It's yeah, it's just a good level 1 filler. Like, put it in your build, please. But yeah, those are all my thoughts on Kasumi after reaching level 50 with her. To summarize, I really love her utility. The fear, the disarm, the damage reduction. It feels really cool. And most of the utility can be countered by resilience. Like, people complain about the fear and the disarm, but honestly, I don't think that's a cause for it to be nerfed. It's just, she's one of those characters where you just suck it up and you buy resilience, kind of like Atlas or Genos, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Yeah, it's just, it means she has a lot of utility. And I think that's really cool. I like those gimmicks. I love the gimmick of the bombs, being able to teleport to them, and having that whole trapping play style where you can trap certain flank routes and you can kind of get the jump on some people if they try and attack you from a certain angle, but also those same people can use their traps against you if they're smart. It's a cool dynamic. The movement ability is an interesting concept, but it just has one inherent flaw, and there's a really elegant solution to fix that flaw, which is just allow you to cancel the ability early and teleport to your spirit on a separate bind. So like, you would left click to teleport to your spirit, or you would press the ability button again to teleport to your body. Do that, and it will feel so much better. And then, in terms of her damage, her ultimate, her Savage Tear, reduce the auto-aim cone. It will be so nice. It will make her such a more healthy character for the game, because it'll solve so many problems. It'll make her feel more fun to play, because you actually have to put a little bit more thought into your aim. You have to actually have a little bit more skill. It'll make her feel much better to play against, because it won't feel like she's getting cheap free damage on you all the time, which is especially bad for 25% of characters in this game who rely on evasion to live. You know, basically the entire flank class. But it'll also be a buff to Kasumi in the sense that she won't be harmed as much by enemies who are grouped up, or enemies who have deployables or shields, because the auto-aim targeting won't mess up and target things that she's not aiming at. So it would solve so many problems, and it would put her in a much more healthy state. And then at that point, if there are issues with her damage being too high or too low, fix it then. But until the auto-aim is fixed, I don't think it's really fair to say, oh, let's nerf her DPS. But if you were to nerf anything about her DPS, my preliminary advice would be, hey, let's nerf the Savage Tear card by just flat out reworking it into something different, because it's not really a healthy card for a character to have, you know, a card that just straight up gives them more damage. It's not really that great for having diverse loadouts. So yeah, those are all my thoughts on Kasumi, and yeah, let me know what you think. Let me know if you agree with my opinions on Kasumi, if you agree with my suggested fixes for Kasumi, and yeah, just let me know your thoughts, because I would love to hear them. I do read my comments, and yeah, I just would love to see what you guys have to say. And yeah, if you like this video and you want to see more from me, then make sure to drop a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. And while you're at it, check the description. I stream on Twitch, and I have a Discord server, and both of those can be found in the description. And lastly, if you want to support me, please consider buying crystals, the season pass, or anything you were planning on buying anyways from my Nexus. Nexus.gg/AndrewChicken. You can buy pretty much anything Paladins related there and support me in the process, and it's pretty much the exact same price as you would pay anyways, so pretty great place to be. But with all that being said, thank you guys for watching. I will see you all next time. Peace out.